talking about Sarah Spain, my colleague here at ESPN, based out of Chicago. Does a great job on the radio for us on the weekends. Does a great job covering various sports. Does a great job with ESPN Chicago. Great job with ESPNW. She was on Around the Horn yesterday, and she said something that gave me cause to pause. She was talking about African-American fathers. She's not a black woman. But she broached this subject because of LaVar Ball and his histrionics and how he's conducted himself and how he's come across to the viewing and listening public. Before you respond, listen to what she had to say, and then I'll tell you what I thought of it. Go ahead, Nuno.
Clearly has an issue with women. And for us to continue making excuses because we think he's a great father for being there and caring about his kids, I think that's an incredibly low bar for fatherhood and actually insulting to black fathers that that's all we expect of them. We need to have realistic conversations about his flaws.
Wow. She talked about it being an insult to black fathers because they have low expectations about LaVar. I took a step back, and you know what conclusion I drew, ladies and gentlemen? Sarah Spain's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. By and large, as a dad myself, I'm here to tell you, most African-American men who are fathers love their children and do a damn good job of taking care of their kids. There are some who ain't worth 2 cents that give new meaning to deadbeat, that are awful and reprehensible and should be ashamed of themselves for bringing a child into this world and not living up to the responsibilities of taking care of that child. And not just monetarily. But most black fathers I know, just like most white fathers I know, just like most Latino fathers I know, love their children daily and exhaust means and measures to provide and take care of their families. And is this narrative out there about black men? And the narrative is so bad because you hear about deadbeats. And I'm here to tell you right now, by and large, it's usually because, or sometimes it's because the man doesn't happen to be with the mother of his child. We live in a different day and time. And even though marriage is the ultimate sanctuary as far as I'm concerned, and something we should all aspire to have, if you ain't lucky enough to have it, you ain't lucky enough to have it. Look at the divorce rate. And that ain't just in the African-American community. Look at the divorce rate in the white community. Look at the divorce rate in a variety of communities. Whether you were married and divorced or never been married before, there are a whole bunch of children in this world whose parents are not together. I consider it two separate issues. I'm not married. I'm a father. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed of it either because I'm not a father. I'm a daddy. And most African-American men I know who are fathers are daddies. So when Sarah Spain comes out and she highlights the fact that we need to elevate the standards and stop giving this man a pass, meaning LaVar Ball, and we really need to have a great discussion about it, she's absolutely right. Because even I have been guilty of finding myself feeling the need to come to the defense of LaVar Ball because Lonzo Ball and LaMelo Ball and his children are such good kids. And I'm giving him credit for it, and it's not that he doesn't deserve it, but it's that we speak of it like it's such an aberration. So as a result, it almost gives tacit approval to his histrionics because, my God, at least we could say he's a good father. And let's not completely denigrate him or his actions because he's such a good father. And what Sarah Spain is saying is no. Okay, you're a great dad. Okay, you paid the bills. Okay, you provided for your children. You put a roof over their head, clothes on their back, food on their plates. You raised them to be good kids. Congratulations to you. What the hell does that have to do with how you're acting now, covering the AAU tournament, covering or coaching in an AAU tournament? Pulling guys off the court because you don't like calls that officials are making. Calling out a female official saying she needs to stay in her lane. Telling her to go someplace and having her replaced and having Adidas and its summer league sign off on that. Sarah Spain is right. She's absolutely right. She's challenging us as not just a culture, but as a society to maintain our level of standards and not to diminish them in any way just to appease an individual who may not deserve it. Chris Rock had his I think it was Bigger and Black, if I remember correctly. But he sat up there and talked about, you're a man, you out there, I take care of my kids. What you want, a cookie? You're supposed to take care of them. Supposed to. Sarah Spain said the same daggone thing, just not as funny as Chris Rock was. I have no problem with what she said. None. A matter of fact, I want to applaud her for saying it because she's saying something that most folks don't have the courage to say in this day and age. Don't lean on this narrative. The narrative might be false. There's plenty of men out there being good fathers. What does that have to do if you're acting like a damn fool? That doesn't absolve you. Being a good parent doesn't absolve you from other actions and transgressions. You're supposed to be a good parent, and you probably are. That's the case with LaVar Ball. I happen to genuinely like him. Obnoxious behavior and all. I genuinely like him. But I do not in any way approve of what I've seen him do over the last few weeks. To me, telling the world that you average 2 points a game in college, but you could beat Michael Jordan or you could beat Charles Barkley, I mean, that's just laughable. Or that Lonzo Ball is better than Steph Curry right now, that's laughable. But he did tell us Lonzo was going number 2 overall to the Lakers. He did tell me his son would end up with the Lakers. And he was right about that. He did say his son could ball. He was right about that. He did say probably two of his 3 sons will go pro. After watching LaMelo drop 36 the other day in Summer League in the AAU, he might be right. The other stuff, not so much. But that's harmless. But pulling kids off the court because you don't like the officiating, taking your ball and going home per se, he's wrong. Talking about a female official that way, he's wrong. Period. And by the way, sitting there talking about you could do anything you want with your kids, you're absolutely right. But not everybody else's kids. The other players that play on that team with his son LaMelo, they didn't want to come off the court. They might have wanted to play ball. He needs to be thinking about them more than he's thinking about himself. There isn't a professional or a collegiate or a high school athlete on the planet that has not been exposed to bad officiating. So what? Play through it. That's what you're supposed to do. He didn't do that. But Sarah Spain is right, y'all. She's absolutely right. And I don't expect to hear a word against what she had to say. Because she made a damn good point. Don't lower our standards for anybody. Black men are indeed good fathers. In a lot more cases than not. What do we want, a cookie? Ain't that what we supposed to do? 866-729-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 866-729-3776. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show. on ESPN Radio in a minute.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
Back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. To the phones we go. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Let's go to Brandon. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, B. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling. What's up?
Oh, no problem. That's what's up. Now, I want to touch you with two topics. I'm going to start with LaVar Ball.
Go ahead.
The stuff he's saying that he does with this latest situation, you can't talk about women like that. You can't consistently use the word she over and over while giving a woman criticism.
Yep.
Now, this isn't LaVar Ball's fault, but I feel like since mankind has started, it's like you can't really use the word she so much without criticizing him, and that's not his fault, but we live in such a masculine world that women are still belittled like that. So when you talk about ladies, you got to understand that, like, women is precious. That lady probably has some children. You know, you grew up in a house with 5 women. That's one of the last.
Well, here's where you and I. Let me stop you. Here's where we disagree. There's nothing wrong. Listen, she's a she. She's not a he. So he's not being disrespectful by saying she. Where he's being disrespectful is by saying she should stay in her place. That's where he's being disrespectful. Just saying she, like if you're talking about her, you're talking about her. She's a she, not a he. It would be disrespectful if he's called a he. Okay, so let's not go there. He just shouldn't be saying stay in your place and then getting her removed because he doesn't like the way she's doing her job. That's not his place. That's where he crossed the line. Go ahead and make your second point.
Well, I want to touch on this a little more, and then I'll get to it. But with the whole she
you don't
thing,
have all day to take care of it to get to it, brother. You got a whole bunch of calls on this line, but go ahead.
Okay, now with Chris Paul, remember when that female referee came in? He said she one time, and we know Chris Paul is a man. He was giving legitimate criticism to that referee, and he said she one time, and there was an overreaction about that.
I don't recall.
I'm just saying, you don't recall?
I don't.
Oh, all right.
I'm gonna go to your next point, bro. There's other calls on the line. Go ahead.
I'm about to appeal to your ethos and bring that into question as well as your emotions. Now, first thing earlier today,
my man, was that really necessary? You're about to appeal to my ethos and do all that. You done wasted 30 seconds, man. Come on now, get to your point, bro. Come on.
I'm trying to get it out. Okay, now you said the Dodgers should get to the World Series at least, or have a great chance of winning it, which I agree with you. 40 games above 500, most definitely. But your Yankees just made some moves. They brought in Jaime Garcia. They brought in Sonny Gray. Now, what if it's New York and L.A.? I know I'm getting hypothetical right now, but what if it's them in the World Series?
Well, that's what I just said. I said it this morning on First Take that, the way it's looking right now, it could be the Yankees and the Dodgers on a collision course, and I'm going with the Yankees over Kershaw in a Game 7.
Oh, I didn't know you said all that.
Yes,
I know
I
you
did.
brought both of them up, but you didn't bring up the scenario of them actually playing.
Oh, well, you wasn't listening because that's exactly what I did. Now you ran out of time. I got to go to get some other callers. I appreciate the call, though, Brandon. Thank you. Let's go to Chris in L.A. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Chris?
Stephen A. Appreciate you taking my call.
No problem, bro.
Just
go ahead.
Quick. All right, Stephen A. Just real quick. I want to touch on what Sarah Spain said.
Yep.
I believe it was yesterday, and what you touched on. Like yourself, Stephen A., I'm a single father. I'm 29 years old. I have a little girl who's 5. So for what she said, and I agree with what you said, and she's absolutely correct. But Stephen A., going back even further than that, like, that's nothing new, though, Stephen A., that we've always had lower standards for African-American men. But like you mentioned on numerous occasions, that it's not just us, that it's not just African-American men who don't take care of their children. Just obviously there's white American, there's Latino America. I mean, there's everyone who doesn't do that. So it's not just us. And for her to say that, I think she was absolutely correct. And we need to have higher standards. And what Max touched on today on First Take about when he brought up the whole Chris Rock quote about guy basically making fun of what he said on the stand-up about black fathers not taking care of their children is like, the ones who do take care of it, like, what do you want, a cookie? Like, you're supposed to do that. And she dives a little deeper into it, Stephen A., but I just wanted to touch on that and get your perspective.
She did
a
hell of a job. She did a hell of a job. She made a very, very valid point with what she's saying. And if we're true to what we're saying, that the narrative is false, that far more African-American fathers and far more fathers, period, are being the dads to their children that they're supposed to be, then she's absolutely right in pointing out how we shouldn't hesitate to hold LaVar Ball accountable as opposed to letting him off the hook because him being a good father is some sort of aberration. She talked about us needing to have a discussion about that, and Sarah Spade is absolutely right.
She's absolutely right. Like I mentioned to you yesterday, Stephen, I know you got to go, about the whole AAU thing. But what was more alarming was that the parents are allowing their children to play for a guy, I guess, who's setting a bad example for their children. I mean, that's a debate for another day, but that's the scary part about it, is that he's giving out the wrong impression to other children outside of LaMelo, Lonzo, and LiAngelo.
That's true, and acting like he's not, because, you know, you're encouraging kids, you can do whatever you want to do. Everybody doesn't get to do what they want to do. That's not true. Everybody doesn't get to do what they want to do. It's a false narrative to put out there that everybody gets to do what they want to do. Well, guess what? LaVar Ball wanted $1 billion from Nike, Adidas, or Reebok. Did he get it? No. Everybody doesn't get to do what they want to do, particularly when you have your hand out for somebody else's cash. You have to acquiesce to some degree, and that's the kind of message people need to understand because it's real, and there's no way around that. Appreciate the call, bro. Thank you, Chris. 866-729-ESPN. Ray in Queens, talk to me.
How you doing today, bro?
I'm all right. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, man. I totally agree with your colleague Sarah. I think LaVar Ball. Don't get me wrong. I salute him as a father.
So do I.
I salute him as a father, but I also think that he's an idiot sometimes with the things that come out of his mouth. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, I also blame the media a lot, because you correct me if I'm wrong. I never ever seen a father, African American, white father, no kind of father, get this kind of media coverage, and their son is the number 2 pick in the draft and got drafted by the Lakers, and he gets more media attention than his son. Because
he gets more media attention than his son because he's the one that instigated the coverage of his son by saying the things that he said. Even though we knew Lonzo Ball could play, he wasn't getting this kind of shine until LaVar Ball started talking about his son.
And that's my point. Even though LaVar Ball started talking about him, that I felt like more of the coverage should have been on him, because I watched him in UCLA, man, and I watched him in the summer league, man, and he didn't put in some work. But everything is all about his father, and all the nonsense that he said. But I think all that's entertainment, like you said, with the beating Barkley and the Shaq and all. I think that's all entertainment. That's fun and well. But what he did to that female referee, and I'm not going to say what he did, what Adidas did, because Adidas allowed him to say what he said, and then they did what they did. That's totally on them. She should not have been removed from that game, and they totally embarrassed her by doing that.
Well, you're right. I appreciate the call, Ray. Thank you so much. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Ray is right. Brandon was right to some degree, even though Brandon tried to sit up there and sound like an intellectual. Just get to your point, bro. Other phone calls were waiting. Got a lot of phone calls to still get to. Rob Ninkovich for the New England Patriots is coming on 15 minutes past hour number 2. Plus, we got a lot more stuff to get into. Some NFL stuff as well as some NBA. Stick around. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show, continuing on ESPN Radio.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Phones we go. Right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Let's go to Marcus. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Marcus, good afternoon. Good morning.
How you doing, man?
I'm all right.
My thing is, I think Sarah's wrong, man. I think she's wrong, because no matter what he says to her, that doesn't take away the fact, about it. That doesn't question his fatherhood. He's still a good father. He can still be a bad person, but why is his father still being questioned?
Whoa. You totally misconstrued what she's saying. What she said, right. What Sarah Spain said, she said nothing about him as a father. What she said is to sit up there and to excuse his behavior as a coach in AAU ball by leaning on the fact that he's a good father is a disservice to African-American fathers out there, because we're acting like it's such a big deal that he's such a good father that should absolve him from everything else. That's what she's saying. She's not saying he wasn't a good father. She's not questioning that. What she's saying is, if you are a good father, what does that have to do with how you behave as the coach? Because all you're doing by saying he's such a good father is leaning on the fact that he's a good father to excuse his behavior outside of parenting. And that's where her point was being made.
Okay, roger that. I got thrown off because I heard a lot of people calling about black Americans and fathers this, fathers that, talking too much about fathers. I thought we was talking about you try to throw them in one pot. So I was wrong on that one.
She was basically saying what I just said and essentially highlighting the fact that basically what we're trying to say is that African Americans have a real big time problem with fatherhood. And so because of that, when we run across an African-American who does it, it's an aberration to the point where we want to applaud him for that we're absolving him from other things. My argument is there's plenty of good African-American men who are great African-American, who are great fathers as African-Americans. That's number one. But number two, because that narrative has been put out there, she has a very valid point in highlighting the fact that that's the aberration that exist in the eyes of the public, and we need to eradicate that and deal with who LaVar Ball is outside of his parenting responsibilities. She's right about that.
Roger that. I understand. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Let's go to Dave in Cali. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Dave? How are you? Good afternoon. Good morning.
I'm good. I'm doing great. Great, Stephen. I just cannot understand why you would come on the air, and I understand your reasoning. However, I still have a hard time accepting the fact that you would say that you genuinely like LaVar Ball. Now, we can talk about all day about his great parenting skills, about how he motivated his kids to be great basketball players. However, he's crossed the line. He's crossed the line. He's shown his true colors. He's just a circus charlatan. He doesn't deserve your respect, admiration, or your words. Genuinely like him.
Well, you're entitled to that opinion, Dave, and I don't blame you.
Let me tell you something, Stephen, and I'm really upset because you have said on the air numerous times that you were raised by your four older sisters. And
four older sisters and my mother. And my mother.
Yes, sir. And your mother and your four older sisters. And then I'm very sorry that your younger brother passed. But the fact is, though, you should not give him that much credit. You give him too much admiration. He is not worthy.
Well, let me say this to you. Whoa. I heard you. Let me respond. You don't get to make that decision for me. You are entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. That's number one. Number two, my opinion about him is based on private conversations coupled with the fact that I met him. Number three, that was before I saw what he did to the official, how Adidas capitulated to him, and before I saw him pull his teams off the court not once but twice just because he was not satisfied with the officiating. What I said is that I genuinely like the guy based on my experience with him, but I can't condone this. I don't like it. He should be ashamed of himself, and he needs to be reeled in. Those were my words.
Let me tell you something, Stephen.
Did you just hear what I said? Did you just hear what I said?
And I agree. I accept that, but let me tell you one more thing. The fact of the matter is, only you and another couple of people that can get in his ear and tell him, hey, listen, you need to lighten up, man.
I have done that.
Some maturity.
I have done that with him. I have told him that.
But after you see that he pays no attention to someone like you still would say, I genuinely like him.
I don't dislike the man. I don't dislike the man because I think that half the time. First of all, let's take the referee out of the equation because there's no defending what he did. And there's no defending taking your ball and going home, figuratively speaking, for taking the kids off the court.
That's right.
All right, there's no defending those two things. Let's remove that stuff from the equation. Dave, what has he done other than be obnoxious, barring those two other things? Being obnoxious in an effort to bring attention to himself to sell his son, which he successfully has done thus far. What has he done?
That's a good argument. That's a good question. That's a good argument.
So what we don't like is what we've seen from him really over the last couple of weeks. Everything else was harmless until the last couple of weeks. Now it's a different problem.
You're right. He's a circus charlatan. He's always has been, but that's harmless. But these recent days is really he's gone over the top.
But he's gone over the top, and that can't be defended, and I haven't defended it. And I'm not going to defend it at all. But I'm saying you got people that hate on him because he was talking about I could beat Michael Jordan and I could beat Charles Barkley and my son is better than Steph Curry. I mean, really? That's why you don't like somebody? Come on. Now, the other stuff is serious. That stuff is harmless. That's my position.
For example, yesterday, you go all out to bash the Dallas Cowboys, and yet.
Oh, my God. Are you a Dallas Cowboy fan?
No, sir. I'm not.
Thank God.
Thank God.
But go ahead.
The Rams are back. But the fact of the matter is,
that's funny, Dave.
That's
funny.
You can't do that.
That's funny.
You should speak that way about the Raiders. The Raiders have been pathetic for the last 15 years.
Oh, please.
They've been in the sewer.
Nobody's been worse than the Cowboys. 22 years, 2 playoff victories, walk around calling themselves America's team. The Raiders call themselves the Black Hole. We in the Black Hole. We got our own fan base. They don't walk around acting like they should represent the United States of America, that they're in the embodiment of the greatest nation in the world with their mediocre selves, with their obnoxious, nauseous, delusional fan base, the most delusional fan base in American history. The Raiders don't do that. That's the Cowboys. Goodbye, Dave. I appreciate your call. I don't want to hear that. There's no fan base more obnoxious, more delusional, worse than the Dallas Cowboy fans. They go 3-13. The season's over at 4 o'clock. And by 4:30, you know we're going to win the Super Bowl next year, right? Nobody's worse than Cowboy fans. Nobody. Period. Hour number 2 up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.